Ask me. Okay, after the class, we will ask the question. Okay.
Okay, sir, ठीक है.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So, in the last class, we already started a discussion on exception handling in C++. So, let me share the screen first. I hope that you have already started your learning on this exception handling. I think the screen is visible to you. So in this in my previous lecture, I already discussed about the basics of exception handling that we are using in object-oriented programming language like C++, and I uh, told you the main differences between an error and the exceptions. Okay, so I have told about how many types of errors are there that we actually seeing while we are executing our code or while we are writing our code in C++ platform. So there are two kind of errors which I discussed: logical error, syntactical error. Then I have discussed about the basics of exception. What is an exception? How we can consider the exception? What are the various types of exception? I already discussed it, like synchronous exception and asynchronous exception. Synchronous exception and asynchronous exception, and I have discussed about these two types in a detailed manner. Then I discussed about the exception handling mechanisms that actually provides the means to detect and report an exception circumstances. So there are four approaches or four steps that we need to follow if we want to handle the exceptions in our C++ platform. What are those four steps? The four steps are like find the problem. We have to first find out the problem, which is technically called hit the exception. Then the second step is we have to inform about the error which actually occurred, and this information is technically called throw the exception. Then the third step that we have to receive the error information. How we can receive the error information? By using a catch block, which is technically called catch the exception. And the fourth one is take corrective actions or corrective measures to handle that particular error or particular exceptions, which is technically called handle the exception. So in the last class, I already told this exception handling is generally consists of two segments. The first segment is detecting the errors or exception and throw the exception. And the second segment consists of catching the exception and take some appropriate actions or steps to solve the exception. These are the two segments the entire exception handling mechanism is divided. Okay. So I also told you in the last class that exception handling, the concept of exception is very much closer to the concept of logical errors, or you can say the runtime errors. Okay, but very much closer. We cannot say these two are identical. Exception and logical errors or runtime errors are not identical to each other. Why? What is the difference between them? The difference is that logical error is based on the logic. Okay, it's based on the logic. That means while you are executing your code or while you are running your code, at that time you are facing the logical errors. Like as for example, suppose you are the example which I also discussed in the last class, that the logical error tells you the difference between the actual output that you are expecting and the output that your program is generating. So there is a difference between the actual output and the generated output. So that difference is actually creating a logical errors, okay, or runtime errors, whatever you say. And exception is something which actually deals with some kind of unusual conditions or anomalies that a program may encounter while executing. That means such kind of anomalies, some examples which I already discussed in the last class. Two examples, very common examples I already gave to you. The first example is division by zero. If we divide a number, a valid number, by a zero, then it will create an unusual results, or it will create a blank result. That means your program is actually ending abruptly. So this is an example, a very basic example of an exception, which is division by zero. Another kind of exception which I already told you or discussed in the last class, that is array index out of bounds exception. That means you have predefined the size of the array initially in your program. Then you are trying to insert the elements over that particular size or beyond the size of the array, limited size of the array. So in this example, I already told you have defined a size of the array as 4. That means maximum this array can hold 4 integer elements. So that amount of memory space it will occupy during the initialization. But while you are actually initialize the value, or while you actually define the value of individual elements of the array, at the same time you have defined the value beyond that limit which you have initialized or declared at the time of declaration of the array. That means a of 4 does not exist, because array index is always starts from 0 to up to n minus 1. So in this case, array index starts from 0 to up to 3. So total 4 elements are there, which actually you are successfully able to initialize those value of those elements. But while you are trying to initialize the value of a of 4, it will give you a special kind of exception, or you can also say some kind of special kind of logical errors, which is called array index out of bounds error. That means you are trying to access such an index of an array which is out of bounds of its initial limit. Okay, so this is another famous example of exception, a kind of exception. So our main approach is to how we can handle this exception. So in last class, I already told we can handle this exception by using 3 keywords. One is try, second one is throw, and the third one is catch. These 3 are the keywords. So the keyword try is actually used to preface a block of statements which may generate exception. So whatever statements or whatever code you are feeling that this code may create some kind of exception in future. It may be possible that you are confident that this code will create, or you are not confident. That's why I am telling you that you are feeling that it may create some kind of exception, or it may generate some kind of exception in future. So that code or that block of statements you will have to define within the try block. So try block is mainly acting like a hit the exception or find the problem. Now there is a throw keyword. So by the help of throw keyword, the exception is detected and it is thrown using a throw statement inside the try block. So this throw keyword may be defined inside the try block, or may not be defined, or may be defined outside the try block. So in the last class, I have told you that the throw keyword, how we can define the throw keyword inside the try block. That sample code I have shown you in the last class. Today I will show you how we can define the throw keyword, or how we can throw the exception by defining the throw keyword outside the try block. I will show you in today's example. Okay. And the third one is the catch. A catch is another kind of block of statements which actually used to detect the exception which has been thrown by the throw statement in the try block. And the catch block defined by the keyword catch, which is one of the keyword in C++, and it handles that exception appropriately. So by the help of catch block, we can stop the abrupt execution of the program. Instead of that, it will give you you can say more controllable execution. Okay, so try and catch, these two things, these two blocks should follow each other. That means the try block, the catch block is always followed by a try block. Try block is always followed by a catch block. That means you have to define the catch block after the try block itself. Okay, that is mandatory approach. So this is the overall exception handling mechanism block diagram which I have shown. It is this diagram I also showed in the last class, where the try block will detect the exception, and by the help of throw keyword, it will throw the exception. Now, throwing the exception means it will actually throwing a special kind of object that is called exception object. That's why this exception handling mechanism is suitable for only object-oriented programming, because exception handling is nothing but handling of exception objects. Okay, exception is nothing but a kind of objects that will be handled by this try and catch block. Okay, this kind of handling mechanisms. Okay, so that's why this exception handling is not suitable for structured programming language or any kind of procedural programming language, because there was no concept of objects, right? So this exception object will be thrown by the try block, and the catch block will mainly responsible to catch that thrown object, exception object, and handle that exception carefully with a easy execution, okay, without abrupt termination. So it may be possible that your program will not generate any kind of exception. It may be possible because what I have said, you have a feel that your code may generate some kind of exception. You are not sure about it. So it may be possible that your program will not create or will not generate any kind of exception. So in that case, the program is terminated with the help of the abort function. This abort function is a by default function which will call by the C++ compiler itself. And if nothing is generated, then the automatic termination of the program has been done with the help of abort function. Okay, so it may be possible. So there is another possibility when the abort function is calling. Suppose you are detecting an exception within the try block and throw that particular exception. Now within the catch block, suppose you have not defined such kind of catch block which are capable of handling that particular kind of exception. One thing you have to remember that not all catch blocks are capable to handle all kind of exceptions. So they are defined kind of catch block based on the argument you are passing through the catch block. It is decided that which catch block is capable to handle which kind of exception. So it is a totally it can be totally defined that all the catch blocks are not capable to handle all kinds of exceptions. So it may be possible that whatever exception is generated in your code, you have used such kind of catch block mistakenly, which is not not capable to handle such kind of exception. In that case, catch block will fail to handle a particular exception. So in that case, the abort function is called and your program is forcefully terminated by the C++ compiler. So this code I have already shown you in the last class, where I have shown you that how the division by zero, this kind of exception is generated. Okay, this kind of exception can be handled. Okay, so here in this case, I have defined only one main method. Now within this main method, I have defined two variables, taking input of two variables A and B through the keyboard, and then do a subtraction between those two input variables and store into a variable, another variable called X. Now within the try block, we will give a condition, if else condition, that if X not equals to 0, then the division will be occurred successfully. That means A/X or A divided by X will happen successfully. Okay, or will occur successfully. Division by 0 has been occurred successfully. Because X not equal to 0 means what? That means A and B are not equal. Then only division is possible. Now in the else part means just opposite of this condition. That means when X equals to 0, that means when A and B are equal of. So in that case, within the else part, the throw keyword is activate and it will throw that object X for which this this kind of division by 0 exception will generate. Okay, so it will throw that particular object X. So throws int object. So X is which kind of object? X is integer kind of object. So it will throw that integer kind of object. So here the try block is ended. So this is a static block. This is a one kind of static block. Okay. So here you can understood, this is the first time you have known that without function we can write this kind of block. Till now, whatever program you have written, always we will use this open brace and close brace as a part of the function type, a function definition. But here I have shown you the block. This is called a program inner block, or you can say try block. Block is nothing but a collection of coding statements. Okay. In the similar way, there is a catch keyword or catch block is there. Catch block is very much looking like a function, but we can say it's a catch block. We should not use the term catch function. Remember it. We should not use the term catch function. We will have to use here catch block, just like a try block. So catch block is always followed after a try block. A try block is always followed by a catch block. Okay. So this catch block, as an argument, we are passing an integer argument type or integer parameter. That means int I. Why we are passing the integer parameter? Because whatever uh, exception that the throw keyword has been thrown from the try block, that should be handled by the catch block. I repeat again, whatever exception will be thrown or has been thrown by the throw keyword within the try block, that should be handled successfully by the catch block. So that's why the argument, it will throw an integer argument as a exception object. So it will handle the integer argument by the help of this integer parameters, okay, within it. And within this catch block, we simply print a statement, any statement you can print as per your choice, and just print the value. That means x becomes 0, so we can see that whether the x becomes 0. So you may print a value x, or you may not print the value of x. It's your choice. But some kind of statement you need to print here, because we don't want that our program will execute it or terminate it abruptly without printing anything. We want that our program should execute it with a good fashion, with a good programming habit, with printing some successful statement or printing some valid statement. Okay. And after this, we can perform any number of tasks after this try and catch. So here we just print this statement cout end. So in the last class, I showed you that if we use this exception or this error directly without the try and catch block, what will happen? It will stuck the program here. So in the output, it will stuck your program while you are giving the invalid input for x. It will stuck the program here and abruptly terminate your program. Okay. But if you are successfully use the try and catch block to handle this exception successfully, then it will print this statement within the catch block, as well as it will perform all the tasks after the try and catch block you have written. Okay. So this is the thing that I need to repeat. Today, I want to show you the similar kind of approach, but with a calling functions like this one. Exception thrown by functions. So till now we have seen that exception thrown within a main block itself. Right now we will see that a user defined function will throw an exception, and that will be handled within the main function with the help of try and catch block. What I have said, the user defined function will throw an exception, and that will be handled by try and catch block within the main function. So our entire program will be divided into multiple functions that we actually shown here in this one. So mostly exceptions are thrown by functions that are invoked from within the try blocks. The point at which the throw is executed is called a throw point. Okay. So throw point should be a part of that function where the point where the throw is executed, the throw is activated. So that point is called throw point, and throw point is a part of the function that causes an exception. So throw point is a part of the function that causes an exception. So when the throw point is activated, it will throw the exception. Okay. So within the try block, the function will invoke the function. Which function? That function which will create or which will generate some kind of exception. So in your program, you have to first write the try block within the main method. Now that try block will call some functions, and that function is responsible to generate some kind of exception, and that function will throw that exception, and it will be handled successfully within the catch block. That is the way. The same thing, but it's a different way. Look at this example. Check it out. Main function, you have written the main function. Now within the main function, you have written a try block. Everyone look at this code very carefully. Within the main function, you have written a try block. Now within the try block, I have called two user-defined function, that is divide function. This is first user-defined function with 3 parameters 10, 20, 30, and this is the second user-defined function with another 3 parameters 10, 10, 20. Okay, so we are inside the try block. This will print and it will call this divide function. Now after it will call or invoke this divide function, the control is transferred from this try block to the divide function block. Which one is the divide function block? This one is the divide function definition. So within the divide function, there are 3 variables x, y, z, which is actually accepting the argument that you are passing during the call. And within this divide function, we simply throw the exception object. Which object? The same logic, division by 0. The same program I am doing here. The same program I am doing here, but by calling or invoking a function separately. So here x minus y is not equal to 0. So x minus y we will consider as a and b. So x minus y when not equal to 0, then the division will be successfully done. Else part, that means when the x minus y is equals to 0, the else part will create some kind of exception like division by 0, and it will throw that exception as a part of x minus y. So you can store that x minus y in some variable as well, and that variable you can throw is your choice. So I have directly thrown the x minus y. And when it will throw the x minus y, it will first find whether there is any catch followed by a try block or not. Yes, there is a catch which has been followed by a try block. The catch is followed by a try block. Okay, followed after a try block. So that catch has an integer argument. So there is it is also an integer argument x minus y. Okay, and it will caught the exception successfully. So if we run this code, so compile time declaration I have already given, so we don't need to give any value. So we are inside the try block. So you can understand in this case we have to first execute this statement within the main method. Then we are inside the function. Which function? Here. That means after the divide call, it will control will transfer here and executing this function divide. And within the function, the result is valid. In this case, the result is valid in the first case, because first case 10 minus 20 is 10. So result is valid. So that's why it will print the division result minus 3. Okay. Now in the second case means again the divide function is called, and in this case the result is invalid. So the exception will be thrown in which case function? In the second case function. That means here the exception created or generated, and here exception not generated. Why the exception is generated here? Exception is created here because 10 and 10, these are the two x and y value, 10 and 10. So 10 minus 10 means what? X minus y means what? 0. So 0 means which block will be executed? Else block will be executed, and it will throw that exception 0, and that will be catch or caught by the catch block, and it will execute it with a proper manner. So in the next case, we are inside the function after the calling of the second divide function, and then the exception will caught. Anyone has any doubt? Tell me. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anyone has any kind of doubt? Clear it. Lateral students, is it clear to you?
Yes, sir.
So you can do any kind of operation after it. Let me do some kind of operations, okay, which you want to see. Suppose suppose I want to do a factorial operation, right? So all of you know the factorial logic. So I'm just writing the factorial operation, but just showing you that after quoting the exception, whether the remaining statements of your code are executing properly or not. Okay, that we need to see here. Okay, so here I am doing the operations of factorial. Just I am giving a compile time input. Okay. E. Okay. So factorial operations we have done after catching the exception. Okay. So let's check it out whether the factorial is running successfully or not. So this is the factorial code. I think it is clear to everyone. So that is the main essence of how the exception handling is doing. If any kind of error will generate and you are not doing any kind of exception handling mechanism, or you are not applying any exception handling mechanism in your program, then you will never ever execute the remaining statement of your program. Your program will stop here. Abruptly it will stop, and it will never execute the remaining statement. That is the main advantage of using exception handling. So if you handle the exception successfully, or if you are able to handle the exception successfully, then all the remaining codes are also executed successfully. There will be no problem. Okay, one thing you have to make it very clear that exception handling is nothing but that your error is removing automatically. No, error you have to remove by yourself. Okay, error cannot be removed with the help of exception handling. Exception handling is only responsible to make your program executed smoothly, as well as executing the remaining statement of your program successfully. That is the only job and responsibility of the exception handling. So it is clear to everyone. Anyone has any kind of question, you can ask me. Anyone has any kind of question, you can ask me. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Lots of questions are asking at the time of interview from this exception handling. So you have to make yourself very clear regarding exception handling. And the same logic will be you will also get while you are learning the Java programming language in your fifth sem. Okay, we'll get the same kind of concepts. Okay, regarding exception handling. Java code is a little bit syntactically different, but overall logic is same. But in Java, the throw keyword is used to create your own exception. Okay, throw keyword is not always need to use in Java. Try and catch block is enough. And in Java, there is another special kind of block which is called finally block, is also applicable during the exception handling. But in C++, there is no concept of finally block. Okay, so what is the job of the finally block? That you will learn while you are learning the Java. Okay. Now, the last thing that I need to show today. Throwing mechanism. So when an exception is desired to be handled is detected, it is thrown using the throw statement, which you have already seen multiple times. So throw statement has one of the following forms. So you can use the throw statement in any form, like throw exception. You can use the exception to throw it, or throw exception you can use without bracket, without first bracket or first parenthesis. You can write the throw, then blank space, then exception. It's your choice, and then you can use only the throw keyword is enough to throw the particular exception. Okay, you don't need to write any kind of exception variable here after the throw keyword. So any one of these form you can use in your program while you are using the throwing statement to throw the exception object. Okay, the operand object exception may be of any type, including constants. Okay, it can be of any type. It can be a character type, it can be a integer type, float type, even it may be a constant type. Okay, and the catch block is looking like a function, but we should not use a function, we should use the term catch block. Okay, we should not use a function term. Okay, but it's looking like a function. So it has a type of argument there, and the type indicates the type of exception that catch block handles. Okay, the catch statement catches an exception whose type matches with the type of catch argument. So sometimes it may be possible for you that you won't understand that which type of exception object is throwing. It may be possible. Sometimes you may get confused that whether it is throwing a float exception object, or whether it is throwing a constant exception object, or whether it is throwing a integer exception object. For that case, there is a default catch block syntax which you may use to handle all kind of exception objects. That I will show in future. Okay. Right now, you just remember there is a default catch block exception syntax. That means you don't need to specify the type of argument explicitly, whereas you will have to use some special kind of syntax inside this type of argument, which will explain or which can handle all kind of exception objects. Okay, it may be integer, it may be float, it may be character, doesn't matter. Okay. Now, the last thing that I need to discuss today, that is multiple catch statement. That is very important. So one thing you have to make it very yourself clear, that in your code, one try block may have multiple catch block. I repeat again, in your code or in your exception handling mechanism, one try block may have multiple catch block. I am telling may have. Okay, one try block must have one catch block, at least one catch block. That is mandatory for exception handling. But one try block may have multiple catch block as well. Okay, because one try block can generate multiple exceptions. and that will be handled by multiple catch blocks. So when an exception is thrown, the exception is handlers are searched for an appropriate match. Okay. The first handler that yields the match is executed. After executing the handler means catch block. Here handler terms is similar with the catch block. Okay. After executing the handler, the control goes to the first statement after the last catch block for that try. So let's check it out. One simple program. Multiple catch exception. Everyone look at this program very carefully. This program is I have just done in a just like the previous case that I have used a different function definition to do the try and catch. Okay, here within the main method, check out the main method very carefully. I just call the function test with a value 1, with argument 1, a constant argument 1, and then in similar way I have called the test function with argument 0, argument -1, and the last one argument +2. So how many arguments are there? There +1, 0, -1, and +2. These are the 4 arguments or 4 function invocation or 4 function calls are done here within the main method. Now let's check out the test function definition. This is the test function definition in your code. So obviously 1 argument I am passing during the call. So obviously there should be a 1 integer argument. There should be 1 integer variable which will responsible to receive that particular argument, right? Now within the test method, we have defined a try block to handle the, not handle, sorry, to throw the exception, to hit the exception, okay, to find the problem. So if x equal to 1, we have thrown one exception x. So you can say, sir, is it necessary here to throw an exception? Because it is not doing any kind of division by 0 or division by, or adding this out of bound, these things. So is it necessary to throw an exception? So let me tell you that exception can be thrown as per your choice. If you want, then you can throw your own exception. This is an example of throwing your own exception. Let me repeat again. Exception can be thrown as per the user choice. So if you want to throw an exception as per the user choice, you can throw your exception in this way. Okay. Now we will say, sir, can you tell me a real life example where we can throw an exception according to user choice? Yes, I can tell you. Just remember the banking transaction example. Banking transaction. All of you know that there should be a limited balance in the bank. There must be a limited balance. Right now, the savings account, all the savings account must have a limited balance or a minimum balance. Suppose 2,000 rupees. Suppose 2,000 rupees is the minimum balance. So whenever a person banking software will stop that limited balance. Okay, and that stop has been done with the help of throwing an exception. Throwing an exception, and while that exception will be caught by some kind of catch block, it will show you the message that you have reached your limited balance. Match that you have reached the limited balance of your bank. Okay, so this is a real life example where we can create our own exception or throw our own exception and handle our own exception successfully. So here you can suppose the X is your savings account amount, and if the X is less than 2,000, then you will throw an exception. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In which real life example you can apply this kind of exception handling of your own choice? Have you understood the example which I have given to you? The banking example.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this kind of example you have to remember, because in future if you are going to build a project in final year project, or in future any kind of project with the help of the C++ coding or C++ language, then you will have to use this kind of exception handling to handle the exception or to generate your own exception. You can frequently use it. Okay. So here the simple example has been given that if x equals to 1, then it will throw x. Else, if x equal to 0, else if, this is actually else if. Okay. Else and if has been written in two different lines, so don't make it confused. It may be written in the same line. Okay, same approach. Okay. So else if, that means another condition is like a else if ladder. So else if x equal to 0, it will throw x. So what is the difference between this x and this one? Can anyone tell me? What is the difference between these three?
Character, float, and integer.
Yes, this is character, this is float, and this is integer. Okay, just for making you differentiate, I have used three different kind of throwing objects. Okay, so it will throw a integer objects, exception objects. It will throw a character exception objects, and it will throw a float exception object, or you can say constant. Okay, this also can be considered as a constant exception object. Okay, so a constant means float value, floating constant, you can say. So these are the three. So this try block is capable of throwing three different exception objects. So obviously we need multiple catch block to handle these three different exception objects. Very simple, because in the previous cases the try block will throw only one exception object. In the previous two cases, only one integer type. But here in this case, the exception object will, the try block will hit three different exception object, or the throw statement will throw three different exception object. One integer, another one is character, and the last one is the float or double, whatever you say. Now, within the catch block, I think you can understood why I have written these three catch blocks. The first class catch block is written to handle this character when x becomes 0. This throw exception object. The second catch block is written to handle this exception object, and the third catch block is written to handle the double or float exception object. Now you may say, sir, can we shuffle the ordering of the catch block? Yes, we can definitely shuffle the ordering of the catch block. Doesn't matter. It will find. The compiler will find. The control will find. Is there any catch block exist in your entire code which will able to handle such kind of exception? If it finds, then it will execute. If it doesn't find, then what happened? Can anyone tell me? If it does not find that there is no suitable catch block exist to handle any one kind of exception, what happened? Which method will call then? Yes, very good. Abort method will call, and that is a by default method. You don't need to call it explicitly. It's a by default method that C++ compiler will call itself, that abort method. And this is the end of your try catch block or try catch system, whatever you say. So if we run this code, these are the outputs. All the three exceptions has been successfully handled. Okay. Four calling. Actually, I have made 4 calling here. 1, 0, -1, 2. So all kind of exception has been handled successfully. Okay. So this is your try catch, multiple catch exception handling, you can say. So this is the last topic that I need to discuss today. Then from the next week, I will again discussing another 2 topic of the exception handling, that how we can rethrowing on an exception object. That means exception object can be rethrown. That means after first time throw, then you can again rethrow the same object. Okay, how we can do that? Okay, that we will discuss in the next class. Okay. So if anyone has any kind of confusion or any kind of doubt regarding this program, you can ask me. Any kind of doubt, any kind of confusion.